Welcome to Puglia, which is sometimes referred to as Apulia in English. We're in the heel of the boot of Italy, and this region is most famous for its olive oil production and its rich and varied landscapes. From the glittering Ionian Sea to the amazing trulli houses of the Itria Valley, in this video we're going to show you the best things to do in the region, including where to eat, the best hidden gems, and the spots you won't want to miss. So let's go and explore. Grotta Zinzulusa is best known for its beauty, as well as its fascinating stalactites and stalagmites, which create visually interesting formations in the rock face. Exploring the deep depths of the cave, which is by guided tour only, will take you to delights such as the Corridor of Wonders, which is as enchanting as it sounds, and the Duomo, where you may even spy some bats hanging out. Otranto is one of the most popular places to visit in southeast Puglia, thanks to its amazing crystal clear waters and the incredible stretch of coastline here where many people enjoy taking a dip in the sea. The actual town itself, the main highlight of that, is the incredibly preserved historic medieval city centre, which still remains fortified to this day. Now you can wander inside the pedestrian-only streets, explore the shops, boutiques, cafes and many restaurants. The Aragonese castle dates all the way back to the end of the 15th century and is a grand fortification which presides over the rest of Otranto. Today it costs €12 to visit, but in that €12 you can learn more about the history of the town, see the fortifications and also visit some temporary exhibits. At the moment there's one on photographs of Frida Kahlo. Visiting the castle is also a great daytime activity because at this time, which is the early hours of the afternoon, most attractions in town are closed due to the heat. This includes the cathedral. Luckily though, the castle is open to the public for that fee, and you can explore the rooms, which are very cool and a welcome respite from the hot heat and sun. I think that the prehistoric area of the museum might be undergoing some kind of renovation, so hopefully it will be fixed by next year. So is the castle actually worth €12? Well, because it's in a bit of a state of disrepair, I do think it would be fairer to charge €8, but that's a really important point to make about Otranto in general. It's a very expensive town to visit. Everything here is pricier than elsewhere we've seen in Puglia, including the restaurants, cafes and gift shops. So do bear that in mind if you're coming to visit. I just went swimming, and honestly, I can see why this place is so popular. The water is surprisingly quite warm, the waves aren't too big, and it's just really a relaxing experience. The Cathedral of Otranto dates all the way back to 1088 and is constructed atop of 42 marble and granite pillars. But the real star of the show is the amazing mosaic flooring, which dates all the way back to the 12th century and depicts the Tree of Life. It's completely free to visit, making it one of the top attractions in town. Another free thing to do in town is to stroll alongside the historic ramparts and enjoy beautiful views of the harbour. It's around 4:30 and it's actually amazing to see the difference between the middle of the day and now, because this is when all the locals, all the tourists are starting to come out. It's really a different ambiance in town and the weather is much more agreeable. Just a short drive away, you can find Torre Sant Andrea. This is an unmissable stretch of coastline where you can soak up some of the weird and wonderful rock formations that carve out Salento's east coastline. As well as the picturesque beach, the #1 reason to visit the area is the amazing white rocky towers, or as they are geologically referred to, sea stacks. These fascinating cliffs have been shaped by the erosive powers of the Adriatic Sea and wind for millions of years, beating against the malleable stone and forming natural archways and hidden coves. A little further inland, you'll come across Acaya. This is an enchanting, crumbling hamlet, home to a mere 400-something residents, and evokes a time warp as you wander through what feels like the Middle Ages. One of the best things to do while wandering around Acaya is to visit the Castello di Acaya, a mastery of military architecture. This is Mesagne, and it's a bit of a hidden gem of Puglia because it's tucked right in the middle, inland, kind of far away from everything. This was actually the cultural hub of the Messapians, who were a pre-Roman civilization who lived here around 2,000 years ago. During Roman times, Mesagne was found along the Appian Way, which connected Brindisi to Rome. Today, there's a Norman castle, several beautiful Baroque churches to visit, and a smattering of restaurants. In fact, the reason we're here today is to eat at the very same restaurant we discovered 3 years ago on our last visit to Puglia. So hopefully, it's still as good as the last time. There are a few small yet quirky museums to discover, including this one, which is devoted to sacred art. From the rooftop of the Sacred Art Museum, we have great views onto the Norman Castle. Inside, there's an archaeological museum. Unfortunately, we don't have time to visit as it's closing soon, and our dinner reservation is even sooner. What I truly love about Mesagne is the amazing mix of modernity meets the ancient. So we've just walked past several restaurants which looked quite delightful, and we're in this open air archaeological area that's completely free to look at, and it's a blend of the old medieval buildings, some older finds still from maybe 2,700 years ago, and there's some information panels that tell you more about the history of Mesagne throughout the ages. The Church of All Saints dates back to 1650 and dominates the surrounding area. My favourite free museum of all in Mesagne is this amazing model museum. There's a scale model of Mesagne itself, of a baker's, of a butcher's, of different places in the nearby region. And like I mentioned, it's completely free to visit, but donations are always welcome and appreciated. I should also mention that because this is Italy, there's a very Catholic theme because most of the things inside are also nativities. I would love to stay and explore more of Mesagne, but we have one more important thing to do tonight, and that's to go to the restaurant. We dined at Antico Forno, which is sat in this lovely intimate courtyard and serves up classic local cuisine, including vegetarian options. This is Gallipoli, and it's known as the beautiful city. The town actually started off as a Greek settlement, hence the Greek name, and now it can be found on the Salento coastline on the west-hand side. It's best known for its amazing sandy beaches, but it's also got an incredible fortified old town which you can visit. The best part of Gallipoli to explore is the Centro Storico, which is a historic city centre. There's lots of shops here, it's all pedestrianised, and there are a few hidden gems such as the Baroque churches, a museum dedicated only to the sea, and also an old perfumery which dates back to the early 19th century. The most important ecclesiastical building in town is the Basilica of St. Agatha. There's actually a marriage going on, so you can't really visit right now, but what a lovely day for it. There's also this rice to throw on the couple afterwards. As well as walking through the pedestrianised old town, one of the greatest joys of visiting Gallipoli is walking along the fortifications alongside the sea. When you're walking around, I think one of the most special parts of Gallipoli is the chance to wander through history. For example, in this church dedicated to Saint Giuseppe, there's actually a part of the floor which has been removed so that you can see the older Roman or Greek ruins below. Santa Maria di Leuca lies at the very southern tip of Puglia. It's home to a monastery, a lighthouse, and the name actually derives from the ancient Greek meaning light or bright, because we're quite high up here, and also the sun is very, very bright. Even with my sunglasses, it feels quite bright to look out. During the end of the 19th century, this became a really popular resort town among Puglians, wealthy Puglians, because of its beautiful sandy beaches, its crystal clear waters, and today you can visit the monastery, there are a few tourist shops, there's an ice cream parlour, and most of all, you can admire the beautiful view that people have been admiring for thousands of years. When you're driving through Puglia, you'll find that there are a lot of little towns which remain frozen in time. This is Presicce, and it was actually once called one of the most beautiful towns in Italy. There's not a great deal to see here apart from a ducal palace and several Baroque churches. Nevertheless, it's wonderful to wander through. Specchia is a tiny town of around 5,000 residents. It's widely regarded to be one of the most beautiful towns in Puglia, much like Presicce. Here you'll find a really laid-back, quiet pace of life. The town was attested as far back as the 9th century, but it truly came into its own and grew a lot of wealth during the Middle Ages, when it became famous for its olive oil production thanks to the nearby hills which are full of olive groves. Today you can wander around the pedestrianised streets and have a drink in the main town square, which is what we're going to do now. The Contemporary Rock Art Museum is a bit of a hidden gem of Specchia. We're around 2 kilometers away from the city centre, so we've taken the car. It was around a 5-minute drive, and this free to visit exhibition was created by local artist Marius Branca. He comes from Salento, but he lived abroad in Switzerland for 20 years before moving back to his native Italy. He has created this sculpture park of sorts on land that he owns, and today you can admire all of the beautiful sculptures as well as enjoy views onto Specchia. Yet another hidden gem of the Specchia region is this beautiful church, which dates all the way back to the 9th century, making it one of the oldest buildings in the area. Unfortunately, it is closed to the public at the moment. I read that it opens sporadically, so I don't really know how to advise when it might be open. However, the edifice is still quite beautiful to admire from its exterior. Bye! This evening, we're going to be exploring the beautiful city of Lecce. This area is best known for its amazing Baroque architecture, and while it's pleasant to visit during the day, the city truly comes to life at night with lots of eateries, bars, restaurants, shopping opportunities, because in the daytime it's obviously very, very hot here because we're very inland, and so at night it's much cooler to explore. I can't wait to show you what this amazing city has to offer. Lecce is also a great place to base yourself, to visit the south of Puglia, because it has all of the hotels and restaurants that you would want from such a place, but it has easy transport links to elsewhere in the region, and it has lots of main roads that go to all of the other main towns in the area. One of the most important things to see in Lecce city centre is the ancient Roman amphitheatre. This was probably built between the 1st and 2nd centuries Common Era, when the city was known as Leuca. It was actually lost to the annals of time for thousands of years and was only discovered at the beginning of the 1900s by workers from the Bank of Italia. Today you can only see part of the ruins, as not all of them have been uncovered, but once upon a time this amphitheatre would have seated 25,000 spectators. Lecce's amazing Baroque cathedral is one of the best examples of Lecce Baroque and was actually founded in 1144, but it wasn't completed until 1689. Unfortunately, it's closed this evening, but it is very beautiful to admire via its exterior. Later on at night, more and more people come to this square to admire just how stunning it is. So if you do come to Lecce, make sure you come earlier in the evening so that you can see the cathedral with fewer people in front of it. Vincent City is another hidden gem of Puglia that I definitely don't see enough people talking about. It's the living home and museum of the artist Vincent Brunetti, and he spent the past 30 years transforming this space into an amazing array of colourful tiles, artworks, sculptures. It's truly, I can't even describe how astounding this place is. You just arrive at the driveway and you're greeted by all of these frescoed tiles and collection of colours which you wouldn't necessarily think would go together, but somehow do. It's completely free to visit, though donations are always appreciated, and you'll probably need around 20 minutes here. It's actually, as I mentioned, a really hidden gem, as we're the only tourists here apart from one other couple, and so if you do come, you'll probably be the only people to explore this space. While the site is named for Vincent, there's actually another artist who has created a lot of the works here, and that's Erode d'Oro, who produced mosaics here for around 5 years while he lived on site. And so actually the whole place is the creation of two artistic minds rather than just the one you would think. Together with Sicily, Puglia is one of the biggest wine producing regions of Italy, and so we've come to a vineyard to check out the local wine. So we went into the boutique, and apparently because it's peak harvest season, which is approximately from the middle of August to the beginning of September, depending on the year, it's actually closed for visits, and so you can only buy the wine. It is quite cool though, because we saw some of the grapes being transported into the compound. And not only that, but it's worth noting that the harvest here is way earlier than back in France, where it's maybe a month and a half later. San Vito dei Normani is a typical quintessentially Puglian town. There's not much here by way of attractions, but the Centro Storico is quite delightful to walk through thanks to the presence of a Norman palace which largely dates back to the 15th century. There are also several Baroque churches and some lovely pedestrianised streets to wander through. The history of the town actually dates all the way back to 1800 before Common Era, as prehistoric remains have been discovered in this area. Today there aren't a huge amount of tourists here, so if you're looking for somewhere a little quiet to wander around, this is the spot. This is also a great halfway spot to stretch our legs between our last destination and our next destination, which we'll head to now for lunch. Ostuni is a town of around 35,000 residents. Its main crowning glory is the amazing old town, which is known as the White City thanks to the fact that it sits perched high up on a hill overlooking the surrounding area. It's all whitewashed, and from here you can see views onto the sea, onto all of the olive groves that surround the town, and onto the very amazing countryside of Puglia. Today, one of the main things to do is wander around the maze of cobbled lanes and steep steps that make up the old town, which is all pedestrianised. There's also a church and a few small museums.
Ma che buio stasera. E già da un po' sono in strada con il capo all'insù a guardare verso il cielo e non mi riesce di trovare la luna. Mi viene una gran voglia di chiamarla. Luna! Magari si affaccia? Sarebbe bello, no? Tu la chiami e lei si affaccia. Non c'è niente da fare, la bianca stasera non c'è. Al suo posto c'è invece un suono che viene da lontano, una melodia, una bella melodia.
Torre Beach Pozzelle is the closest beach to Ostuni, and aside from the fact that it's actually free to visit, one of the unique aspects of this beach is that you're surrounded by the luscious green hillsides. We've come back to Lecce just in time for sunset to do something very special, and that's go up the Campanile and to visit the Duomo. I truly do recommend timing your rooftop visit to coincide with sunset, as this is when you'll get the best views of golden hour, and it's amazing to see the modernity of the city juxtaposed against all of the old buildings, such as the historic churches and even the Roman ruins. This is the Faggiano Museum, and the story behind it is honestly quite incredible. Back in 2001, a man named Mr. Faggiano wanted to open a trattoria in this building with his two sons. Unfortunately, it didn't at all go to plan, and it's actually quite by chance that this didn't happen. So basically, he wanted to fix a plumbing issue in the downstairs area. I think it was a toilet, I'm not sure. There was some sort of plumbing issue, and so he decided to break the floors in order to find the leaky pipe. At the time that he did this, someone from the city was walking past the building and saw that there were illegal or non-authorized works going on in the house, and so they decided to report this to the Archaeological Society, and the house was completely shut down. It was decided that there had to be an archaeological dig here. However, the city had no money, and so after a year of waiting, Mr. Faggiano decided that under the guidance of a supervisor from the city, an archaeological one, his two sons would do the dig themselves. The sons weren't at all trained in archaeology. In fact, one studied cinema and the other studied languages. It was expected that the dig would probably only take 6 months, a year, something like that. In actual fact, it took 7 years. And that's for the simple reason that this house has actually seen thousands of years of history. It dates all the way back to the Messapians, who were the pre-Roman people who lived in this area. They actually had a crypt on site. Later on, the Knights Templar constructed a really important base here, and there are still Masonic inscriptions throughout the property. Later on still, there was a Franciscan convent on site, and so you can still see traces of that past as well as later medieval additions. All in all, after the works were finished, the family decided that they didn't want to run a trattoria and would turn this place into a museum so that people could learn more about the history of their family and of course of Lecce. Today, it's one of the best museums I've ever been to. If you're lucky enough, you'll actually meet one of the owners. We just spoke to one of the sons who did the dig, and it's so interesting to listen to his story and how this museum came to be. As soon as you step foot in the Duomo, you are greeted by this amazing array of intense beauty, frescoes, ornate carvings, and the like. I truly do think it's worth going inside and paying to visit. Even though this is a pricier activity in Lecce, it's truly worth it and is one of the most unique structures of its kind in Puglia. We personally opted to stay in Torre del Parco during our time in Salento, and it was around a 10-minute walk away from Lecce's old town. I loved all of the outdoor spaces, but the thing I probably enjoyed the most was the buffet breakfast, as it had lots of local produce, and I ended up spending every day starting out with mozzarella, tomatoes, local pastries, and lots of other amazing delights. This morning, we're going to be exploring the beautiful city of Monopoli. This actually comes from the ancient Greek monos polis, meaning unique city. Monopoli was founded as far back as 500 before Common Era by the ancient Greeks, and now the main thing to do is wander around the Centro Storico, which has seen thousands of years of history. The other thing that Monopoli is famed for is its historic port and its blue boats bobbing in the water. Although Monopoli was somewhat of a hidden gem of Puglia in times gone by, this is no longer the case. When we came 3 years ago, we were the only people at the port area. Today, it is so full of tourists, you can probably hear them in the background of my audio. Another popular pastime in town, particularly among the locals, is to go swimming just off the rocks here. So that's what we're going to do now. Swimming in the sea here is just magical. It's the second time I've done it and the water is so crystal clear. You can see little crabs walking on the rocks and it's altogether a very pleasant and free experience, because for a lot of Italian beaches you actually have to pay. So you'll go to an Italian beach club which is known as a Lido and you'll have to pay for like a sun lounger to be out in the sun. So when you find a free area to swim in like this, it's also very clean, it's definitely a positive. Polignano and Mare is one of the most popular places to visit in Puglia, and you'll see that as soon as you arrive because it's kind of hard to find a parking space. It's actually really well known for its beach, which lies right in the middle of town, and its steep cliff faces, which are topped with whitewashed houses. There's also a really beautiful bridge here, which is very popular on social media. So let's go and check out what this town has to offer. Domenico Modugno is one of the most famous people to have been born here in Polignano and Mare. He actually wrote the song Ballare, which is inspired by the town, and while he left during his childhood, he remained inspired by it for the rest of his life. If you want to see just how dramatic the coastline is around here, then you need to go down the steps, which are just behind the statue. This area is also a really popular spot to go tombstoning, which is where you jump from the cliff face. There is no way I would ever do that. I don't even think I can make the baby one from over there. As well as the beach and the beautiful vistas, the other thing to see here is the Centro Storico that's completely pedestrianised. The Centro Storico is made up of the kind of narrow cobbled lanes that you would expect, whitewashed buildings, a few Baroque churches, but most importantly of all, two amazing balconies which are very famous on social media. Honestly, one of the most surprising things about visiting these historic city centres is that the centres of them will be very busy, for example around the church, etc. But once you get to these little streets, they'll be so empty and quiet, and you might be the only people on them. Another fun thing to do when you're wandering around the old town is to look at the poetry trail, which is scattered across the area, and there's lots of little quotes by famous people. San Vito is a delightful fishing village around a 10-minute drive away from Polignano and Mare, and yet it feels worlds away because there's hardly anyone else here. We could actually see it from one of the vistas, and it reminds me a lot of Monopoli because of all of the blue and green boats swaying in the breeze. You don't need more than maybe 15-20 minutes here if you want to take photos, but there is a beach bar and also lovely water to swim in if you're feeling like it. This evening, we're exploring the delightful town of Locorotondo. This is often referred to as the balcony of the Valle d'Itria, thanks to the fact that it sits high on a hill above the rest of the surrounding region. The town itself is whitewashed, similar to Ostuni, and it has some delightful cafes, eateries, and it will take around an hour or two to explore. We have a bit of time before we go for dinner, and so we've stopped at a local cafe for a quick drink. I've got a classic Aperol Spritz and Tonto Negroni. Mola di Bari is sometimes referred to as just Mola for short. We're far away from all of the tourist hotspots, and I think that we might be the only tourists in this square. The town is particularly famous for its focaccia production, and the main industry here is still fishing, unlike many other parts of Puglia where it's become tourism. There's not a great deal by way of attractions here, and so the main attraction is to wander around, enjoy all of the stunning Italian architecture, spy all of the cats resting in the shade, or do as the locals do on their time off and enjoy a coffee or a lemonade or a beer in a little piazza. We just arrived in Conversano, which is a delightful medieval town, which is a little bit off the beaten tourist track. I actually discovered this town thanks to a Netflix series called Jumping from High Places, much like San Vito. And today it's home to a medieval castle, a Romanesque church, and several delightful eateries. A thunderstorm has just begun, which is very refreshing, but you might hear it in the audio. Although Conversano is a fairly substantially sized town of around 25,000 residents, the Centro Storico itself is pretty tiny, and we even got to meet a local resident, i.e. a local cat. Hello! One of the main buildings in town is this church, which is dedicated to the Assumption of the Virgin Mary. It's actually quite unique in the region because it's Italian Gothic and Romanesque, whereas many of the other churches we've seen so far have been Baroque in style. This feels very Italian though, because it says it's open online, but we've just arrived and we can only admire the exterior because it's closed, which is something we found quite often in Puglia, that things will say they're open, they're closed, things will say they're closed, they're open. And so you kind of just have to go with the flow when you're visiting the region. This is Alberobello, and it's world famous thanks to its many trulli, which are known as trullo in the singular. These houses are particular to the Itria Valley and can be found all over the area, including in Locorotondo and Sistinino. They're traditional dry stone wall houses which are circular in form and topped with a conically shaped roof. They're built to keep out all of the heat, and they date back thousands of years, but they truly came to a head during the 19th century when they were used by lots of labourers. Today, the Rione Monti district of Albarabello is world famous for these houses because of the sheer concentration of them. But that also means that this is a particular tourist hotspot, so do come here earlier in the day or in the middle of the week if you want to avoid the worst of the crowds. For the most part, truly a single story, but there are some two-story ones. Now, when you wander around the town, lots of these truly have actually been turned into shops, and this has been great for the locals in some regards, but in others it has resulted in over-tourism because of the amount of people coming here. So now we're going to go on to our next destination, which is entirely different and definitely not a Disneyland version of Puglia. This is Taranto, and it's the second largest town in Puglia. It's often referred to as a bit of a gritty city, similar to Naples, because of its complicated history. It was really badly bombed during the war, and while it's slowly being rebuilt, it's definitely not being completely rebuilt yet, unlike other places in the area. Today, you can stroll alongside the walls of the old town, visit the Duomo, see the castle, and go for a local dish, which is seafood. Taranto has a bit of an unfortunate reputation in the wider tourist community because of two reasons. Firstly, there's a lot of past allegations of corruption in the area, and the second is that it's surrounded by lots of industrial areas. However, that's definitely a perception that's really changing. Even though we're currently the only tourists right now in the old town, there are more and more people coming to the area to explore the little cobbled lanes, visit the eateries, and meet the locals. Everyone we've met so far has been really friendly. We've just arrived at the super packed trattoria. It's full, and you actually have to arrive, take a ticket, and then wait 20-30 minutes, and then you finally get to get your table to order to eat. It's known for its seafood. The plates are super affordable here. So is the wine. Our Airbnb host told us that the wine is the same price as water. Our wine's arrived, and it was $1.50 for this, but it's not necessarily a wine that I would go out and buy myself. It's okay though. So when we ordered, I explained that I'm vegetarian, and they were quite surprised, but they were happy to order me like an olive oil and garlic pasta, and honestly, it's one of the top dishes I've ever had in Italy. The food here is amazing. All in all, this restaurant was amazing. I think it has the worst wine I've ever had and the best pasta. And we also had a few translation issues because normally we speak Italian okay, but they have a special dialect here in Taranto, and so we didn't necessarily understand everything the waiter said. So when we thought we'd ordered 2 coffees, we'd actually ordered 2 coffee mousses, which were also delicious. We've just driven from the train station through the old town to the newer part of town, and this spot too is very delightful. There's views onto the castle here as well as onto the sparkling water of the coastline. The architecture here is also particularly beautiful. This is Grotta, and it's particularly famous for its ceramic production. There are lots of little workshops here, and you can see some of the fire kilns. Puglia in general is really well known for its pottery, particularly its splatterware ceramics. And so let's go and see what some of these shops have to sell. This is a pumo, and it represents the bud of an acanthus flower. It's actually a symbol of fertility and prosperity here in Puglia, and miniature versions are a really popular ceramic souvenir to take home as a gift or for your home. For the second half of your stay in the region, I really recommend basing yourself in the Itria Valley, where you can even select to stay in a refurbished trulli. We stayed in this one close to Locorotondo, and our host was so friendly and made us an amazing breakfast each morning. In fact, we actually stayed here back in 2021 and loved it so much that we decided to come back for a second stay. Along with Albarabello and Locorotondo, Sistinino is one of the three main towns and most beautiful towns that make up the Itria Valley. From here, you have gorgeous views onto the surrounding vineyards during the daytime. It's obviously the nighttime right now, but this is when the city truly comes to life with lots of bars, cafes, eateries. We don't have time to eat here tonight as we have a reservation somewhere else, but we can go for a little wander. We finished our final full day in the region by heading to Il Cortelletto for dinner. This was a local cuisine place, and I do recommend booking in advance as space fills up fast. There are a few things you should know before coming to Puglia, and I'll call them practicalities as they are. The first thing to know is that you should definitely carry cash with you at all times, even though most establishments now take bank card, some don't, and sometimes you'll go to an establishment and they'll say, actually, our bank card isn't working, so can you pay in cash? The next thing to note is that when you go out for meals, you'll often want to book really popular places in advance, up to 1 to 2 months in advance, otherwise you might be disappointed. In order to get around the region and visit 90% of the places that we've mentioned in this itinerary, I really recommend renting a car. Taxis aren't really a thing, and you'll be quite hard pressed to find one. There is public transportation between major towns, but often it will take you 2 or 3 buses to do something that you could do in just half an hour car journey. When you rent the car, I do recommend getting the maximum insurance possible because the roads here are quite bad in some places, and so it's pretty inevitable that you'll get chips in the paintwork, things like that. The driving can also be quite atrocious, and we've seen several small level collisions where obviously everyone's fine, but the cars do get a bit banged up, which you don't want to be paying for when you're renting. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more Europe travel content. See you next time. Bye!